Like and subscribe right now, or this spider will crawl on your face when you're sleeping.
We always think we're safe when we walk in groups. Keep vigil, stay focused, and voila, you'll be home safe and sound from any potential dangers. But that's not how the world works. No matter how prepared you are, there are just those times when a person will be snapped up and completely disappear from the face of the earth. Yes, these are people who disappeared without a trace, and their disappearance is still a mystery to this day. No corpse, no last footage recording, no communication, nothing. Clearly, the most logical explanation to why they cannot be found is because, well, I'd hate to say it, they probably went to the upside down. With that being said, let's take a look at 10 average Joes who were living their lives when they suddenly disappeared from the face of the earth, without as much as a goodbye. Number 10. Owen Parfit. Owen Parfit lived in the English town of Shepton Mallet and mysteriously disappeared sometime in the 1760s. Parfit was unable to walk on his own due to disease, so he lived with his sister, who took care of him and helped him move around the house. One day, Parfit was sitting outside right by the front door, where he usually sat, and his sister came over to move him. In the chair, she found only the coat that her brother had covered himself with to keep warm. She thought perhaps that a neighbor had moved him inside the house, but when she looked, he was nowhere to be found. All the neighbors said they had not moved Parfit and had not seen anyone else move him. No one ever saw him again. Because he was unable to walk on his own, we can only assume that Owen Parfit was sucked into another dimension while he was sitting in his chair. Creepy, right? Before we move on, I've got a little challenge for you that'll take 5 seconds to complete. So here's the deal, you just leave a like on this video, smash that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and you will get 25 years of amazing luck. Try it, it really works. Number 9. Brian Schaefer. Brian Schaefer was a medical student at Ohio State University who disappeared in April 2006. Schaefer met up with several friends at a bar one night, and he was last seen sometime around 2 a.m. when witnesses saw him talking with 2 women at the bar. Soon after that, Schaefer's friends couldn't find him anywhere. They realized that he was no longer in the bar, and so they left, thinking that their friend had just gone home. But Brian never made it home. In fact, he vanished, never to be seen again. The strangest part of the story is that this particular bar had security cameras at the entrance. The police found footage of Schaefer entering the bar, but there was no footage that ever showed him leaving. Investigators found no evidence of foul play. Number 8. Louis the Prince. Louis the Prince was the inventor of the motion picture, though Thomas Edison would take credit for this invention after the Prince disappeared. Was a patent-greedy Edison responsible? Probably not. The Prince mysteriously disappeared in September 1890. The Prince had been visiting his brother in Dijon, France, and boarded a train to go back to Paris. When the train arrived in Paris, the Prince did not get off the train. The train made no stops between Dijon and Paris, and the Prince could not have jumped out of the window of his compartment since the windows were locked from the inside. The police searched the countryside between Dijon and Paris anyway, but never found any trace of the missing man. It seems he just vanished. There is a possibility that Le Prince never boarded the train in the first place. The Prince's brother, Albert, was the one who took Louis to the train station. It is feasible that Albert could have been lying, and he actually slayed his own brother for his inheritance money. But at this point, we'll likely never know. Number 7. James E. Tedford. James E. Tedford mysteriously vanished in November 1949. Tedford boarded a bus in St. Albans, Vermont, where he had been visiting family. He was taking the bus to Bennington, Vermont, where he lived in a retirement home. 14 passengers saw Tedford on the bus, sleeping in his seat after the last stop before Bennington. What doesn't make sense is that when the bus arrived in Bennington, Tedford was nowhere to be seen. All his belongings were still on the luggage rack. What is even stranger about this case is that Tedford's wife also disappeared some years earlier. Tedford was a World War II veteran, and when he returned from combat, he found his wife had vanished and their property had been abandoned. Did Tedford's wife find a way to bring her husband into the next dimension with her? Stranger things have probably happened. Number 6. Thelma Pauline Melton. Thelma Pauline Melton was a 58-year-old woman who disappeared while hiking with 2 of her friends in September 1981. The 3 friends were hiking in the Great Smoky Mountains on an easy trail that Melton was very familiar with. Melton was walking a bit ahead of her companions, so she was the first around an upcoming bend. When the friends rounded that same bend, they found that Melton had vanished. Melton suffered from high blood pressure, so the possibility that she could have suddenly sprinted off is unlikely. No trace of Melton was ever found. Number 5. Prabdeep Sran. Prabdeep Sran is a Canadian military reservist who disappeared on a hiking trip in Australia in May 2013. Sran parked his rented camper and set off on the main range walk in Kosciuszko National Park. A staff member called the police when he noticed that the vehicle hadn't moved for almost a week, though it only had a 24-hour parking pass on it. The bizarre part of this case is that 2 park rangers heard a voice that sounded like a cry for help coming from the area Sran disappeared from. Despite this information, searchers couldn't locate Sran, and the origin of the voice remains unknown. Number 4. Elizabeth Oprah. Elizabeth Oprah is a 77-year-old woman who lives in the Blue Mountains area of Australia and went missing in March 2016. Oprah was walking on one of the trails in the Blue Mountains when she got lost. One day, after her family reported her missing, rescuers were actually able to get a hold of her on her mobile phone, at which time she said she was okay, but had no idea where she was. A few days later, both residents in the area and police heard screams for help, but still the searchers were unable to locate her. To this day, Elizabeth Oprah has not been found. At the time she disappeared, she was apparently taking stroke medication, which can cause confusion and may explain why she got lost. But that doesn't explain how searchers were unable to locate her after speaking to her on the phone and hearing her cries for help. We've now come to the best pick of the day, or in this case, the saddest pick of the day. There's nothing as sad as having a photo of a family member that has mysteriously disappeared. It would always remind you of the good times you had together, wouldn't it? But sadly, all you can remember them by is a photo stuck in time. Number 3. Martha Wright. Martha Wright disappeared in 1975 when she and her husband Jackson were driving from New Jersey to New York. When they were driving through the Lincoln Tunnel, the couple had to pull over because there was a lot of condensation on their car windows. Martha wiped off the back windshield while Jackson took the front. When Jackson had cleared the windshield, he looked up to find that his wife was gone. There's nowhere that a person could have run to in the middle of the Lincoln Tunnel, and it's highly unlikely that someone in another car would have been able to pull over and snatch Wright without her husband noticing. It seems as though she just vanished from the spot where she was standing. Since there were no other witnesses, there is the possibility that Jackson Wright took his wife's life and made up the story about the tunnel to explain her disappearance. But if you wanted to cover up the slaying of your own wife, why would you tell such an implausible story? Number 2. Brandon Swanson. Brandon Swanson is a 19-year-old college student from Minnesota who disappeared in May 2008. He was on his way home from a night out with friends and his car ran into a ditch. He called his parents and asked them to pick him up. This is where the story gets strange. Brandon told his parents his car went off the road near a town called Lind, Minnesota, and he was going to walk toward that town where his parents would pick him up. However, as his parents approached Lind, they saw no sign of their son or of his car. The car was later found near a different town called Taunton, Minnesota, not even close to where Brandon said it would be. Brandon routinely traveled that particular route, so it's unlikely that he would have been wrong about where he was. Brandon was on the phone with his father for about 45 minutes as his parents were trying to locate him, when he suddenly said, "Oh shoot," and then the line went cold. Authorities postulated that Brandon fell into a nearby river. but when his parents called him back, his phone kept on ringing, which would not have been possible if it had fallen in the water. All those calls went unanswered, and Brandon has never been seen since. Number 1. Damien McKenzie. In his book Missing 411, author David Paulides describes the mysterious case of Damien McKenzie. McKenzie was a 10-year-old boy who disappeared in 1974 while on a camping trip at Victoria Falls, with a total of 40 students. The group was on a hike to the top of the falls when they noticed that Damien was gone. According to one of the other kids who was on the same camping trip, searchers tracked Damien's footprints all the way up one side of the falls. But the footprints mysteriously stopped, as if something had snatched Damien up. No one saw any suspicious people in the area, and canine tracking dogs were unable to pick up a scent trail. The boy was never found. It's as if Damien was suddenly beamed up, leaving an unfinished trail of footprints. If that doesn't scare you speechless, then I don't know what else will. And as this video comes to a close, let us know in the comment section down below which of these disappearances spooked you out the most. Want more videos that will exist until the end of time? Click on any of the amazing videos that you see on the screen. As always, thanks for watching.